I want to say a special welcome to Your Grace. Thank you for attending. Father Mark is very happy that you're here. So let's get things going. Let's get things rolling. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to show a video. And this video features Christine Vollmer, who is the founder of Alive to World International.
Good day to you all. How wonderful to be here with you. Dear Tonia, dear Father Mark, and dear Leonard, and the rest of your wonderful team. This is a marvelous moment, and I would love to be there with Father Mark as he presents this wonderful book. But unfortunately, I can't be there. So I've been asked to tell my story and the genesis of Alive to the World. The story is simple. European by birth and of a normally religious family, as people were in those days, I went for some years to school in the United States in the 1950s, where I was able to see and thoroughly dislike the early beginnings of the disintegration of the Christian civilization and of the respect for life and the family. When I later married into a traditional Catholic family in Venezuela, I sensed a kindred spirit and family values. But later, in the 1980s, I began to see that same disintegration creeping in. All of you, all of us are feeling and suffering and fearing where this is leading the world. The effects in crime, violence, family breakdown, misery of every kind, and the fact that no one seems to be able to trust their governments anywhere anymore are indeed very worrying. The good news is this, because there's always good news. I believe in good news. There is a tendency, a big tendency, to return to proper anthropology. We've gone so far, people are coming back to look, what's the real truth? Because what we're being told is complete fantasy. The purpose of Alive to the World is, of course, to impact education and bring teaching back to the whole person, the whole boy or girl. For perhaps 80 years, a materialistic tendency worldwide, as well as material interest by the pharmacological industry and the eugenics movement, have pulled education away from educating the whole person, while pretending that professional excellence is the most important element for young people to acquire. The system simply erased the learning of virtues, of patriotism, and of heroism, which were for many centuries important elements of education. Now, the anthropology of integration is a new sort of subject and comes at a moment when disintegration is all around us. What interests us at this point in time is the integration of the person. We see the need of it all around us in the confusion about gender or genders, the breakdown of families, and even the fact that young people are less and less prone to marry. Commitment is a value which is increasingly avoided, and couples that do marry are wary of having children. And so this book is really needed. Anthropology, as we know, is the study and knowledge of the human being, the anthropos. The more we know about the human being, beyond cultures and styles of living, the closer we are to understanding how humans function and what makes them flourish. And of course, integration is indispensable for the correct functioning of any system. Each part must be geared to enhancing the performance of every other part. And it has 3 principal levels, well described in this book, with ample references to Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, and other great authors, great thinkers. Father Marx has kept it simple, but it is very, very well referenced. My thanks and admiration go to our hosts, Communities Alive, and to Tonia Gooding and her valiant and wonderful team, who've headed this highly needed return to right thinking and teaching. I must congratulate dear Father Mark for this important book and for his understanding of people and the diligence that was needed to put together so many vital concepts in a way that all parents and teachers can understand them. This will be a great tool for the rebuilding of the sacred concept of the human person, God's pièce de résistance, his masterpiece. Those are our children. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful toast, I hope, after this. I wish I were with you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thanks to Christine there. So, Father, let's get into it. Let's talk about the book.
Okay.
All right. So, as most people here know Father Mark, they probably know your style, your easygoing way, the way that you're able to very quietly convince people, and firmly, though, I must say, in my experience of working with you. Tell us a little bit about the genesis of the book.
Well, first, I would like to say thank you, Franca, for being here. Franca is amazing. Anka couldn't make it, but I think, it's all good because Franca, she has been amazing in putting me in touch with all this media and setting up the event today. So first, I wanted to say that, Franca. Just I'm
My
very
pleasure,
happy.
Father.
And Franca knows everybody, and everybody knows Franca. Yes. Okay. So I can vouch for that. So the book. I normally begin this way, saying that if you open the book, there's no divine seal on it, okay? Now, I'm a priest, the Archbishop is here, so it's hard for you to convince that this is really not a religious work. But let me say, it is not a religious work, okay? That this book was actually fruit of a lot of time spent working with young people, bringing out the best in them. And young people have many challenges. And I came to realize that we need a new approach to transmitting character. So young people, for example, it's hard. I mean, you hear old people, there aren't any old people here tonight. Yes. But they often say, well, young people, they don't listen. These are things that you hear. It's hard for you they want to see things for themselves, and that is very true, and there's something good to that. And by the same time, they live in a world that is very confusing. There are a lot of what called identity politics, so that we have white against black and rich against poor, and we've seen this recently, even what we witnessed in the American elections, that people have been speaking about that. And so that young people, while it's kind of a paradox that while you want to make decisions for yourself, you find that they are sort of drawn into this kind of identity politics. And it's very confusing. And then at the same time, and Christine Vollmer spoke about it, in this quest for progress, in the quest for even just solving all these issues, we have lost sight of the fundamental values which the older folk, there are none here, but if we ask them, they will tell you that we know about, and which was the core values of health society together. And our education system in a way has failed us, but we need to bring those back.
So you are, of course, your book speaks of a holistic approach to the human person.
Yes.
Remember the first time we spoke, I said, human person, isn't that redundant? But now I understand why you say human person.
Yes.
Because it's more than being. It's actually an integrated, as you say in integration, a joining of all the parts that seeks to complete the human person.
Yes.
So, I have no children, but I have lots of little ones and younger ones around me who think I'm a cool auntie. But I know that they're facing a lot of challenges. And, in reading the book, I thought, I challenged authority when I was young as well. And there were always challenges to authority. And if we look back through history, for example, Black Power revolution was a big challenge to authority,
Yes.
something that took our country a little further, even though it was quite a disruptive thing at the time.
Yes.
But what do you see further as the main challenges that are facing young people? And how should we, as the older folks, we are older, we are the generation now that is in charge, more or less, they're ahead of us in so many ways.
Yes,
How do we help them face up to those challenges?
Okay, very good question, Franca. That is why we need a new approach. We need a new approach. So that before, what we would do, we would teach character was, we could say, a kind of a morality of obligation, a series of things that you need to do. And also, character, in the past, it was how to put it? It was kind of, it was twisted a bit in the sense that it kind of became watered down a little bit and becoming a kind of success, or become how to deal with stress and things like that. So we need a new approach where, rather than telling people what to do, we try to help them to see it and discover it for themselves. And this is where the book speaks about a new strategy, which is based on 3 principles. And these are knowing, accepting, and doing. So that it promotes or suggests a way where we speak to them using stories. And through these stories, we question. So it's about asking the right question. They come to see the value of things, for example, like friendship. And then there's the next movement where, through that important principle, which is do unto others as you have them do unto you, we wake up the spirit. So that the thing that you mentioned there, the whole person. So we try to engage the whole person in the story, the biological dimension. We engage them, asking them about the emotions that are there present. How are these emotions drawing the persons? What is the emotions making them think? But then drawing them into that principle of the do unto others, the golden rule. They now come out of themselves and have access to, hey, what would that other person feel in this situation if another person lied about them? Or how would that impact another person if they were mistreated?
In the case of, for example, bullying that takes place today, a lot of it.
That's exactly. Now, we would try to have an approach where we would not condemn that. We don't want to fall back into the old method, the old way of saying, don't do this, it's bad to do this, and don't bully. We want to say, well, here's a story. What do you think here? What happens? What's going on here? If you were in that person's position, would you like to be treated this way? How would you like to be treated? So lead them towards value. So not to a negative saying, oh, we want to attack by bullying. We want to say we want to practice kindness. So that is the whole goal of this new approach, is want to lead them now to a positive value in our conversation, in this methodology of knowing and then accepting, saying, I want to be this person who lives by this value. And then doing now is where we say, okay, now how can I actually practice this? Looking at the story will normally have a model of someone who lived kindness. And you say, well, here's a person who's a good friend. Look how he puts himself out for this person. Do I do that? And that really starts to make you think, saying, am I a good friend? And that can bring about now a change in its kind of behavior, your behavior.
One of the things that strikes me as you're speaking is that whole thing about being in touch with emotions.
Yes.
Something that before, particularly for young men, and now young men are the most, I would think, at risk in the society in a kind of way.
Yes.
Have you found it easier to get young men to be in touch with their feelings, to understand that they can express anger, they can express frustration, but just finding positive ways, or let's say less destructive ways to channel it? How are you handling that?
Yes. Well, that is certainly very important. That is part of what Christine spoke about the disintegration. At times, our impulses, that whether it might be anger, or we feel frustrated, these things can lead us to coping mechanisms. It can lead us to to kind of being revengeful. We see a lot of that happening. And that is a kind of a disintegration, because it's pulling us to a behavior which later on we'll probably regret, and that is probably really not good for us in the long run. So that in this new approach, what we try to do now is help persons to see, that okay, the emotions there's something good in it, in that if I am hungry, it's because ultimately it's the value of life. We want it to be safe. So we say, don't be afraid of emotions. Emotions are good. But at the same time, we want to say to everyone that you have it in you. Each person has it with them. Everybody's a good person deep down. We want to put at the center the dignity of the human person. We don't want to say that any person, because of their crime or because of where they've grown up or whatever disadvantage, that they have no chance. We want to say, no, you have a chance, because man is a human unity of body and soul. Everyone has a soul. So everyone can know good. Even it is from saying, I've experienced all these terrible things. I don't want that. I want something different. Even if it is from rejecting evil, we have access to good. Yes. So don't you see that point? That's a very important point. Sometimes we think because a person has suffered a lot of bad or trauma, then they are somehow cannot be a good person or live out a good life. They just need to be in therapy their whole lives. Mm-hmm. We reject that completely. Completely. We say that person can say, you know what? My parents were divorced. I want to have a good marriage. I suffered a lot. I want something different. And so we can see the good because it is in us. We just have to access it. And this book stands by that. Mm-hmm.
So then how would you, I'm totally understanding what you're saying. It makes absolute sense. But there will be parents, for example, because I know this book is partly aimed at parents, who will tell you something like, Father, he don't hear me, he don't want to hear me at all. Right. Or, or you may have parents who are frustrated because their role models are the people that they see getting through, right? And it would probably go against, some of it would fundamentally go against what you would be calling good things. How do you pull people back from that? There are kids who don't have positive role models in their life. Yes. How would you get a system like this
That's a very good question, Franca. Practicing this methodology of knowing, accepting, doing. Okay, first we must live it our own selves. So first we have to see, is my decision making inspired by values, fundamental values? And so we need to start working on our own self. So that's where it begins for us as adults, as whatever age group we may be in. That's where it begins. But then there's also, how now as adults, how do we do that with the next generation?
How do we model that
model that? Yeah. That becomes challenging, because as adults, we have our own sort of ways of doing things, which the new generation may not connect with. Okay, it's like you have to tell people things that are suited to their circumstances. So like a jacket, if the body changes, you can't have the same suit for a different body. So as adults, we need to know how to let go sometimes of little models or way of doing things. Sometimes the word I use for that is, I'm not sure if it's the best word. I say we have certain scripts that worked for us for how we grew up. And the hardest thing is to sometimes let go of that. As adults, we need to come back to a place where we now focus on the fundamentals, which is what we really know, and allow young people now to be free to explore different scripts, to start to sew jackets in different ways. But that is very hard for an adult. We're quick to say, speak properly, dress this, do this is how your room should look like, wake up, whatever. We're quick to want to tell them what to do. But we need to know how to let go of that and tell them, you have to be an orderly person. Think about that. If you, with this behavior, how is that going to affect you long term? Do you want to be a good family? Do you want to be a good friend? Are you being a good friend? So we have to learn how to now be open to young people, together with dialoguing with us, come up with a whole new sets of scripts, but not new principles. There's a little joke once someone told me. He says that he said, are you a man of principles? He says, yes, I have one set of principles when I'm out with friends, another when I'm at home, I have another when I'm at school. Yeah, I'm a man of principles.
Yes.
So, as adults, we have to say, no. We have to focus on the principles and hold them to account of being consistent with them. But we need to learn how to let go of old ways, old sort of scripts, if you want, And that is very hard for us as adults, but we need to learn to do that, and that's very important.
In the time that you've been working with young people, can you tell me a bit about how you have seen transformation come about as a result of using these principles?
Oh, well, the part of this, that this book was inspired, it was with conversation actually with Christine Vollmer. You'll see that she did the foreword to the book. So this book was actually meant to accompany programs of character formation based on this methodology, this new way, this new perspective, putting dignity at the fore, putting different teaching methodology, so that it is the hope that this book will continue to accompany programs of character formation like this. And it's the whole vision of preventative is better than cure. So we are starting now putting in character programs, starting with children from 5 years old and taking them through at different levels. And so we're seeing that happening, and we have so much. If you go to the Communities of Alive, Tonia's here website, you'll see lots of testimonies of how effective this method has been, and to the fact that this Alive to the World is in 22 countries, 8 languages, and growing.
Yes, because when you tell a child, when you program children with the right things, for example, don't litter. When they get home, Mommy, why are you throwing that there? Daddy, why are you doing this? And it tends to stimulate that kind of change,
Yes, but we're not going to tell them don't litter. Remember?
What would you tell them then?
What we do, we tell you a story. I'll tell you a story. I'll say, look at this. This is a situation. Here's a person who, after that they have eaten, they've picked up, and here's a situation where someone hasn't. Look at this place after this person has left, and look at this place. What do you think is better? What kind of person do you want to be? How would you describe this person? You say, this person is tidy, they're ordered. So we don't give them the script. They understand of their own. I want to be a kind of person that leaves a place in order when I leave.
So you're kind of engendering a bit of critical thinking.
Absolutely.
Something that is sadly missing from our education system.
We let them understand litter using their own words.
Yeah.
We don't have to necessarily put it in that words. But they have accepted it in their own way, their own terms, which is when I leave a place, I want. And then for them now, it'll be not just I pick up and not litter, but if I see something that is out of a bottle, I will pick it up and put it in the bin because I'm tuned now with an orderly environment. It's not just not litter. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. It's, one of the things that keeps coming back to me is the word holistic.
Yes.
You want that holistic hygiene kind of thing.
Correct.
Where it's not just your desk or whatever.
Yeah.
It's everything that you do.
Your whole hygiene.
Your whole hygiene.
Exactly. It's about hygiene, and it's about connecting with hygiene and accepting it and then coming up with new scripts about how you have to live this in your circumstance, because each person lives in a different circumstance.
Now, one of the things that the book is built on is the virtues. I want you to talk us through what those virtues are and how we as adults can embody those virtues a little better.
Yes. The book seeks to present virtues also in a different way, in a new way, in that before traditionally virtues were taught as, again, like a list of things to do. You want to be a strong person, you have to get up early in the morning, you have to have a schedule, you have to stick to your time, you have to be punctual, and so that's a strong person. Okay, we now want to present virtues surrounded around the values. So we are putting at the fore. So traditionally virtues were presented as in catalog around the 4 cardinal virtues. Now, we maintain that, but now we want to present virtues a different way, where we center that around the fundamental values. So we are putting the dignity of the person at the core, at the center. You see, so any virtuous act, right away, we will know it is connected to dignity. So if you look at this at the poster in the back that speaks about virtues, we have the big circles, have the values, and you see the virtues that are floating around.
Yes.
Okay? So that when we're speaking about virtues, that virtues flow from a desire to ultimately to respect the dignity of the human person. And it's a whole, and it grows. And so there are many, many virtues, but they are centered around these values. Does that make sense to you?
It does, because I'm seeing here where you're talking about life, family, and membership and society. So it's like looking at it from a Small perspective to the bigger picture.
Absolutely. So, for example, we'll tell someone, we're not just saying, okay, live fortitude, virtue, temperance, and justice. We're saying, do you want to have a good marriage?
Do you want to be right or married?
Right, exactly. You want a good marriage? Well, you need to be loyal, you need charity, you need to be dependability. And so the virtues now are connected to something somebody emotionally, with their whole person is connected with. So we bring them to the virtues, and they said, yes, my gosh, I want to be a loyal person. Do you want to have good friends? Well, then you need to be loyal. You need to be courteous. You need to be a person who's not like always complaining. You have to learn to be more positive. So we introduce virtues then in that way, and so you can now tell many, many stories, but you're coming back to fundamental values like marriage, family. You're bringing these, always coming back to these fundamentals. And as you're coming back to these fundamentals, you're introducing a plethora of different virtues that people will relate to in a natural way. That's very important.
Yeah, because
it's natural.
I think that's really important. I want you to explain what that natural way means, because one of the things you said, and listening to you said something about we inherently know what's right.
Yes. So that is a very, very important idea, in that, okay, the example that sometimes that is used in the book is, look around at nature. All the animals naturally know what they need to do. The birds know they need to build a nest, where to find food. Why is it we don't know what is good for us? Well, the answer is that we do, and it's natural to us as well. But we just need to know how to do that. And that means we have to do it in a human way, where we engage our spirit. We have to engage ourselves in all the different dimensions. So that now learning the access to the values, we need to, through stories, if people feel it's a natural way. So that friendship, who doesn't want friendship?
Yeah.
Who doesn't want to love society? Who doesn't love life? So then it's really not hard to talk to people about life. And it's not hard to talk to people about society and living together. It's not hard to talk to people about family. But then we need to now help them to see that if you want these things, then it just flows naturally from that there are certain virtues that you need to practice.
So I'm going to turn the attention on the audience now and wondering if anybody has any questions for Father Mark, because this is always important to have a discussion after we have a nice little conversation.
Yes. After Franca asked some very hard questions, I hope that hope I get some easier ones or harder ones. Who knows coming?
Does anybody have any questions for Father Mark? Yes,
Sandra.
Hi. Hi. Good afternoon. So I really know of some of the work that Tonia has been doing with the team, so I have some level. But one of the things that I think about as I'm hearing you speak, all of this needs to operate within a certain kind of ecosystem. So we're looking at the children, the 5-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, in some cases the parents. But what about the teachers? What about the people who have to make sure and reinforce some of what you're doing? Is there a particular program that is geared towards teachers? Because I know if there's religion in school, all my children went to Catholic schools, but that's religion which is more scripted, as you've said, versus talking, telling the stories and let people come about. So I would want to suggest, if not already contemplated, perhaps let's look at other avenues to make sure that ecosystem is sound, so you would get the success that we so deserve. Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Well, the book was meant to support programs for character formation. We mentioned A Life to the World. Part of A Life to the World, Tonia will speak a bit about that, is training. The A Life to the World program anthropology is what is explained here in the book, along with, of course, a little further research that I did speaking to other people. But certainly that is one place you can get training. Tonia, in fact, started training this morning. Is that true, Tonia? Where's Tonia? Yes, so Tonia, she's there bubbly, but she's actually very exhausted. She's actually very tired. She's putting up a very good front. She had 4 hours of training this morning, and she'll have 4 hours next week. And then there's another training program. All this information is available on the Community Life website. There's a poster outside, a large one, which has a QR code. You can scan that, and it takes you to the website where you can see the training that is available, and I think we try to put up the schedule as well as. But the book is meant to also promote other initiatives in character formation. Many people are involved in character formation. Parents, character, are the first ones. So the book is meant to challenge parents also to, first of all, my decision making, as we said, first is your own self at the inside, and to challenge parents, as we said, about, how do I teach character? Am I being effective? Because we need to be effective. And then to give you maybe some ideas that you can maybe discuss with other parents and meet with them and maybe get the book, and some PowerPoints will be available about the book thanks to Professor Arjun. They will have PowerPoints will be available for the book in early January so that groups can come together and they can, using the PowerPoints, present, make discussions. And that, my hope is that this book will help parents to be more effective in transmitting character to their children. And also the young people as well. There are young people here, and the book is for them too, because I think they need to understand that it's not easy for an old folks to just change their ways. We need to be patient with them and to understand that we have the same values. So we can share with them. We don't just write them off, as sometimes young people tend to do. We just try to understand them and understand it's not easy to change, but they can. We can, and we need to challenge ourselves to do that.
I have a question.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That question is a lot of the ways that we teach young people to, as you said, to be orderly and to be good people is that top-down way, right? How will you and Tonia and groups and other people be approaching? So, for example, like the cadets. There's a lot of cadets in a lot of schools in Trinidad. There's Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, but it's all from a top-down approach.
Yes.
How do you engage with those kind of traditional organizations to try to imbue them with more power and to kind of change your thinking, flip the script a little bit?
Yes.
Because that is probably the only thing that some people know. That kind of militaristic or that kind of top-down approach to discipline and everything else.
Yes. Well, I think first we need to sort of appreciate that is how they are. They grew up perhaps in times when there was, some people grew up in wars and experiencing, where the military society was a military culture. So we need to understand that is, they expect this obedience. So first we need to be understanding that they're not like that because they're just uptight people and they're just old-fashioned, or no, it's they really want to do good. So the first step is to understand. And then the second step is we need to challenge them now to see that it's not working. It's no longer working. And that what are you about? Do you really want to form character? Are you really want to help young people? Well, then you need to change.
You think that's why, that whole way of thinking that I guess is scripted and it's kind of hardwired into us anyway, is one of the reasons that we're not succeeding in, for example, the battle against crime, the battle against, all of the societal ills that we have now. Is that something that, is it that we do definitely need to start engaging in a wider way about how do you meet younger people where they are and kind of descript that whole top-down approach?
Yes, I think we do. We keep in mind the media is very, very mean to old people. Very mean. We are responsible for all the problems in the world. The strife, the social inequalities, all around. And in some way, it's true. Because who were the people, who sort of were alive and decision makers, leading up to all the strife, the crime, the world is less and less freedom, all the cliques, increased polarization. So we do need to revise our scripts. And sometimes our scripts are kind of not just need to be revised, but sometimes there are things that we were well-meaning. We got it wrong. More scripts for cliquish kind of behavior rather than based around values. Okay, now that's a long story, but I think we spoke about how character building kind of went off course. Okay, so coming back then to your question, which was about helping young people, you said.
Yeah, how do we meet them where they are? And I mean,
Yes.
because it says here, handbook,
right.
yeah.
So I was talking about about the old folks.
The old folks.
So that young people don't want to listen to us because we are the cause of the problem. So we need to know that. So that means then it's not an easy thing. So we do really, really need to change our approach. Because we're not facing simple like, oh, they just don't like us or they're just being stubborn. We are the problem. So we really need to change the way we approach and deal with young people. We have to get close to them. We have to dialogue with them. We have to be focused on the fundamentals and allow them to come up now with the new scripts, the new jacket and the clothes now that is going to sort of make these values inform society moving forward into the future.
Because, one of the things that I've noticed about this generation,
Yes.
teenagers, they are very, very forward thinking in terms of activism.
Yes.
Look at Greta Thunberg. She's 17? She was challenging governments at 14.
Yes.
And they're more like her. And social media, which has two sides, three sides if you ask me.
Yes.
Social media can be a great leveler in that way so that young people can get their messages out. But then social media can actually impose a way of thinking. Young people often feel that what they see on social media is a real thing.
Yes.
And oftentimes it's not. So it's all of that.
That's the paradox. It's a great paradox that you want freedom. So but what you tend to do is to switch off from your parents because perhaps they don't have a good approach. And where do you turn? You turn to your peers, you turn to the media, and unfortunately, you are thrown into a world where there's all that confusion, where what predominates is the identity politics. And unfortunately, that the education, the system, the fundamental values are lost. We have lost character. We live in a society where this emotivism is what dominates in the media. So it's all about how to handle stress, how you feel, if this person doesn't make you feel right. And we don't have the spirit emerging. You see, so that is the gap that Christine spoke about. It's like things are short-circuited. We try to tell people that they can have a fulfilled life, which is a kind of an emotional, fulfilled, develop your personality, find yourself. We're saying find yourself too, but it has to be your spiritual self.
You have to do the work to get
the whole
there.
self,
yeah.
Not just the emotional self. You have to find your whole self, which means your spiritual self. So that is. So we need to find a way to get that across to young people, and parents have an important role I think in that.
So let's talk about the actual structure of the book, for example. How would you tell somebody to approach a book, a lay person, somebody who pick up this book, somebody say, hey, that's real good. Try it and see if you could help your children. Right? And it could be your kids, as in your children, or the children that you have in your charge.
Yes.
How would you tell somebody to approach the book?
Well, I think what helps is just what you have been getting me to do, Franca, which is to get on, have interviews, go on social media, speak, present, explain. So I think first approach, I think would be just to, if people can, listen to some of the interviews, and then maybe look at some of the comments that people have made. But then the point's reached when you just have to sit down with the book
and read
and read through it. I think they're the posters. So the posters sort of summarize. So I think that a good approach is that. And then if you want, you can attend Sir Arjun's class in next year in the seminary, because he will be also have PowerPoints. And I think what helps is for people to come together in groups where they read together and discuss. Because I think a lot of what comes up in the different chapters, the book is written in a way following just what we're saying. It's just suggesting ideas. It's not a top-down thing. So that I think it's more useful if people read it together and they come together and discuss I think that's perhaps would be the best way to do it. But you can sit with it and read it. It's meant to also be very, very. If you look at the table of contents,
yes,
alone,
it's quite deep.
It's very extensive. So it sort of is meant also for you to be able to take in bite sizes. So that way, everyone I think can get through it.
So I guess the next step is the workbook.
I'll work with Surendra on that one.
Surendra.
Surendra, we have work to do.
I think
help.
No, but I think a workbook would be a good accompaniment for that.
It will be, yes.
Yeah.
It will be, certainly.
Anybody else has a question? Yes, sir? Oh, 2 questions here.
Good afternoon to everyone.
Yeah, this is my Uncle Ronald, by the way.
Hello, Uncle Ronald.
Yes.
My name is Ronald Bartolo, and I have not read your book yet, Father Mark, but from what I'm hearing here, I would believe that you have been talking about getting values back into the young ones. These young ones, do they include the people who I call the belly of the underclass? And if they do, how do you intend to get those parents to read this book?
That's a very good question. There's a very, very difficult challenge that we have there, which is, first of all, to believe that these people at the belly of the underclass really can change. That is our first challenge, because often we feel that, we just need to build bigger prisons to be able to manage them. We have to have remedial institutions. But what we want to suggest is that these people have souls. And if they have souls, they can understand the common good. They can say, what I'm doing is making another person's life difficult. We have to put a pin there and say, well, keep thinking about that and think now if, do you want to be the kind of person, that is doing that? Or do you want to rather make somebody's life better? And then they will say, well, maybe I should change. Maybe I should learn to forgive. Maybe I should work towards reconciliation. So if we start speaking to them about that, if we have an approach where we are thinking more remedial, rather than saying we want to punish these persons, they have to be, we have to have harsher measures. But if we say, let's try and make these people better, I feel that we're on a better path. I think that we will be much more effective. So that's the first challenge. And the second challenge is we need to reach them with effective programs for character formation. We spoke about preventive better than cure. So that is what the book is suggesting. But at the same time, we want to believe that these people can change if we sort of get them in touch with themselves and we get them to make small changes, because they say, you want to have a good family. Do you want to be a person who makes a contribution to society? Do you want to be a person who has recognition because of, something that you've done? And these things, they will feel it. They'll say, oh my gosh, this is what I really want. And let's give them opportunities to do that. Let's give them jobs. Let's give them, opportunities to go back to school, and let's give them a chance. Let's be their friends. Let's believe in them. Let's tell them, I believe you can be something great. And they will mold into that. People mold into the expectations we have for them. And if our expectations for the underclass are low, they will always be that way.
I'd like to make a comment. I've been involved in education all my life. One of the things that came up, I'd like just a little comment by Father Mark. One thing is to, I think, get close to young people, understand them, give them space, help them develop their freedom, their scripts, and so forth. And other things, they have to understand the value of authority. There's an authority, not the authority in the sense of the force of authority, but the authority that comes from wisdom, experience. I think grandparents in that have a very important part to play with the children. In other words, it's not demagoguery. You're not just going to flatter them. You're the young guys, you're the future. Whatever you say is fine. I don't think it's fine at all, unfortunately, and worse and worse. So in a sense, I think we also, that's one of the values, I suppose, to respect and love what other people can give you. Okay, maybe not your parents because you're particularly irritable with them. Okay, but listen to your uncles or listen, but have some interest in authority and experience.
I guess it's a kind of, in a way, that's integration. That's bringing together generations. And it's, like how I am meant to be the cool auntie sometimes, which is a role I take very seriously because I can't undermine my peers for their children, but I can hear what their children are saying and try to show them a different way, or even relate to the parents. Listen, you need to take it down, or you might need to think about X or Y. I think you're right. Grandparents have that special place because you just give them back.
And also help the children listen a little bit more.
Yeah.
And help the children also to listen a little bit more.
Yes.
And to pay more attention. Okay, your dad may have said it in a very strong way, but what he said is very important. Hey, listen.
Yes, I agree with you.
Absolutely, that is true. In the way the media, it came up earlier, blames us for all the problems in the world. So that is one of the makes it very difficult. I totally believe that young people need to listen to the older generation because in a way that we know these values and we understand how they, how important they are because we've lived it. But when the media blames you for everything, that makes communication difficult. This book doesn't really try to solve that. Doesn't really deal with that. That's a whole issue in terms of the media. There's a lot of ideologies around that want to just throw off the past, and so people are interested in doing that because they want to promote their own agendas. So there's all of these things at play. So it's very complex. But as we, I think, just bring people in touch with the values, I feel that we will have a better relationship and more respect for older people, which is very, very important.
We have time for one more question. Yes? Yeah, it's on, so you can.
Hello. Yeah. Father Mark, thank you. Just one question around the practical aspect of character formation and helping oneself, I guess, as well, and people close to you, whether they're children or adults, to embrace as well failure, because there is this issue around willpower. No? You want something, you see it, you see the good, you do it for the dignity. So the center is the dignity. But the reality is that you sometimes, children, teenagers, but adults as well, sometimes notwithstanding wanting a North Star, do something different, right? And that requires a lot of, I guess, forgiveness, compassion, and fortitude, perseverance in the pursuit of the good, and avoidance of the vice or the bad things. So can you say a little bit of that? Because it can be a bit also difficult when people trace ambition to experience, if you will, right? Especially the experience of failure. So if you can say a word on that and how character formation should go in the practical, not so much in the theoretical, but in the practical aspect of it.
So you refer to the practical aspect in terms of like how we manage and dealing with failure. That's more or less that you. Yes. Okay. No. Okay. That's okay. That's a very good question. Maybe I should have the Archbishop speak to that because that's where we have things like confession, the sacrament of confession. That's a very important sacrament. People feel guilty when they've committed sin. We don't want to give people guilt complexes when we are transmitting to them character. Now, they will understand what the goal is, and they would know that when they have failed, and that is important if you want to improve. But we don't want to tell them that you don't have a chance. So this is where it becomes important that we have, for example, where we mentioned the sacrament of reconciliation, that we tell them, you can be forgiven. And this is where parents also need to transmit to them where love, this is where love is so important. Love says, I am yours, you are mine. And that means I want what is best for you, whatever it is. I'm not here to judge you. I'm not here to keep track of whether you have done how much good things or bad things you've done. So when we put dignity at this, the dignity of the human person at the center, it is the hope that we are sort of transmitting character in the context of where we never lose sight of the dignity of the human person. We never lose hope in what a person is capable of doing. And we have love in the sense that we will be willing to work with you again and again and keep trying with you. So the dignity means all these things, but there is a point where we need the sacraments. We need help. We need grace from God. We need Mass. We need the Eucharist, where we need confession. And but that's of course, this book does not deal with that, but that is something that will need to be discussed.
Okay, so I guess, for non-Christians, maybe reading the book, that could probably be the form of counseling, the form of therapy, the form of elders who are wise, who can help to get people to speak about what they're feeling, because failure, there used to be this thing called failure is not an option. However, failure is a very important option.
Yes.
Because if you don't fail, you don't learn. So I think that's really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It is. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
So, Father, that was very, very good. You all give Father a round of applause, please.
Thank you. Thank you. He's going to, he did a kind of an arrangement, it's a pan arrangement on one pan of the song Caribbean Man by Stalin, the Black Stalin. That song speaks about unity, Caribbean unity. I asked him to use that song because I felt that values is precisely what brings us together. We all dream of unity, and that song brings that out in a very beautiful way, and sort of saying, why can't we be united? Well, Stalin says, well, we should need to really look at the Rastafarian movement, to figure out how to do that. But we are saying, no, let's look to values and virtues.
So you're playing with 4 sticks. That's a sign of a virtuoso, you know. Playing with 4 sticks, huh? Bugsy plays with 4 sticks. When a man playing a pan with 4 sticks, you know, it's business. Trouble. A real serious man. Thank you, Luke. You'll give Luke a big hand.
Thank you.
So good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tonia Gooding. Lovely to have you all here today to celebrate with Father on this very momentous occasion. So my role today is to speak about the Life to the World program and the NGO Communities Alive that's responsible for that program. So I'm just going to introduce the team behind the Life to the World program as Communities Alive. So I am the president of the NGO as well as the local trainer. Our vice president and legal person is Leonard Birmingham, who unfortunately is not here today. And our PR advisor is Roxanne, his wife. Both of them have personal commitments overseas, so unfortunately they're not here today. And our administrative director, Elizabeth Innes, is right behind there in black and white. And our financial director and the person responsible for hiring us here today is Leslie Clark. So as you can see, this is our board, and you're not seeing Father George's. That's because under the IT department is where Father George's falls, yes? A man of many hats, IT guru, among many others. And this IT department is also our IT department. It is responsible for whatever we need to do. So Father chairs that with everybody else here who has helped us out at any point in time, our champions, people who work with Father Julius Leacock, many others who at any point in time have been there to help us figure out what it is we need to do. So, Alive to the World itself, it is an educational tool that helps young people discover, appreciate, and assimilate universal values. The program itself is designed from primary school all the way up to upper 6, 5 to 18. And in this way, when we incorporate and help them to understand these values, they are able to change behavior, adopt positive attitudes, as well as therefore change their family environment, society as a whole, including community and schools in which it is taught. So its aim is integral human development, which of course goes along exactly with the anthropology of human integration. And of course, it involves self-knowledge, respect for others, and a pursuit of a purpose in life. Everything that Father mentioned is part of the pedagogy behind the Alive to World program. So basically, before a little history, when we started off about 12 years ago, we started off incrementally. A small group of us as champions and volunteers going into different primary schools. Then the pandemic came. So the creativity that is behind the Alive to the World program and Communities Alive decided to go with the flow and go online. So we created videos. That way we were able to touch many more schools than we previously did. Then came the end of the pandemic, and we had to switch back to going into schools with books. So that was up to about June last year. And what happened since then is that we embarked on a different journey with, I believe, the hand of God. So in July, August, we approached St. Joseph Convent, our first secondary school, my alma mater, my daughter is there, and they allowed us to start the program. And what we did is we got facilitators, volunteers, champions. One or two are here today. One is supposed to be coming on. And they literally were either ex-students, ex-parents, current parents, or parents with Form 1 students now coming in. So therefore, they were all invested in the school. They all wanted to give back to the school. And these we've found have been the best sort of people to actually champion the program because they believe in what they're doing and they want to give back. Then came, yes, Elfie, you're starring, our first government school. And that was La Pastora Government. This was started by Elfish and Randy, our champions from the beginning in Belmont Boys Primary. And now they're in Santa Cruz. They decided to go into a Santa Cruz school. And the principal fell in love. Within a month, we were there. So they literally spearheaded this first government primary school. And what you see there is also a trophy. Because when we enter a school, we try to find out what their needs are. How can we fall into their culture and influence at the same time? So a suggestion was that at this sports day, we come up with an Alive to the World trophy. And this was given to the house that best exemplifies good character and sportsmanship. So again, we listen and we respond. And of course, other schools, if interested and so forth, may follow suit, may ask. But it's an idea that was started just from being in the school and listening to what their needs were. Then came our Christmas miracle. We got thousands of books from England. That has always been the major keepback in us moving ahead. Now we got all these books because the group within England was not thriving as much as we were. So they gave us the books, and now we were able to now spread and go as quickly as needed. So by June 2024, we had practically delivered and distributed books to all the 118 RC primary schools within Trinidad. And of course, thank you, Sharon and the Catholic Board, for facilitating this. What we also did at that time was to begin training again, because I would have started training pre-pandemic in person, but now after the pandemic, it wasn't as easy to facilitate. So we did a beginning in person and then went on to Zoom. And this has been very effective, because what we have gotten from the Catholic Board is every school has identified a champion. And this champion will be trained and be responsible. I think that would follow along with the idea you were talking about, to implement the program in the school, make sure it's being done properly, and be the champion at that particular level. One of the opportunities we also had was to train a sergeant in the police force. And he belonged to the police youth club. And with the training, he was able to allow us to speak to his superiors. And right now, we do have a proposal for the Alive to World to be used in the police youth clubs locally, because they see the value of incorporating this into their whole system of dealing with young people. We see Luke Walker in the picture at the bottom, because he was actually able to work with one of my teachers who was trained to do our first post-SCA class before school ended. So thank you so much, Luke, wherever you are. And of course, the training now allows for us to get feedback from schools. That is the beauty of being able to talk to a teacher from every single school. At the beginning of your training, I literally asked them, tell me, what are your challenges? And let's see how we work together with the program to address what you're going through. But they're also the ones who can tell you that parents need this training. Parents are the ones, the third part of the education triangle, that need to reinforce these particular virtues. So I'm just sharing here the outline of the training that is offered by the Alive to World program. And you can see the first one is anthropological foundations. So that is where we introduce the concept of the integration, anthropology of integration. And then we touch on all other aspects: psychology, ethics, value of the family and sport, complementarity, adolescence, human sexuality, the whole person. And what Father has done in writing this book is give more in-depth understanding of the first part of the anthropology of integration. So, just to run through what we've been doing this term. We continue to train, because so far we've trained over 60, so there are a few more teachers to be trained to cover the entire country. We are working with the primary school champions, each school, their representative. We are chatting with them regularly and trying to keep up to date. We've moved on to Form 2 in St. Joseph Convent, so there's still space for more people who want to volunteer and join with us, because they asked us to move up with the class we had and start in new Form 1s. And I have to tell you that every member of our board has actually taught the program or is currently teaching it. So we are deeply involved in what is happening and relevant, so we know what is happening on the ground. We continue to chat with the community police to find out what happens next. And of course, this term ended off with Father launching his work. So the last thing I'd like to end off with is how anybody here can help and support us. We're trying to stay relevant and address societal issues. So firstly, if you can look up the program, as Father said, the little square, what it's called again? Right, the QR code, you can, the IT man, that's right. Yes, that's not my strength. You can click on it, access our website, right? Find out more about our website, and we have a list of over 60 resources for both parents and teachers that can help in terms of documents, links, podcasts, in creating and helping to promote virtues in different ways. We've gone onto social media, no thanks to me, but we have reached Instagram, Facebook. Roxanne is the one promoting it. So please look out for it, share. I don't know the hashtags and so forth, but we're there. We're there. We started writing articles in the newspapers to keep relevant. So like we wrote on teenage pregnancies, a little bit on the suicide, bullying, and related it directly to how the program can assist, right? So we're trying to keep on doing that. So if you see it in the papers, please feel free to share. Interviews and podcasts. So Father has gotten quite experienced in doing interviews recently. So we will continue to look for opportunities. And we want to highlight one in particular that both Father Georges and I did for Coalition for Marriage in the UK. And the reason we were asked is because, I want to be very specific. In the UK at present, there are schools based on government policies that are not allowed to teach marriage, to speak about marriage to children who are from poorer homes and broken homes. I'll repeat that. You are not allowed to speak about marriage, right? So they wanted to know how we in Trinidad could speak about marriage. So we were happy to share. And unfortunately, we spoke about it before the interview started, so it didn't really get captured into the interview itself. But literally, we speak about family. Everybody has a family. And then because of how your life to will is created, a narrative, it's somebody else's story, you introduce that the character is having a sibling. And that sibling comes from married parents. So you talk about marriage. You're not offending anybody. You're not being insensitive. And that is the narrative they're using. You cannot speak about it because you're being insensitive and you are not taking people's feelings into consideration. So from that perspective, you're actually depriving these young children of the freedom to choose to become married. Because if they don't know what it looks like, they don't know who is married and what it takes, then they're not free to choose it. And the second thing is that the reality is you're telling them they're not worthy. They do not have the dignity to know what is required and to develop the skills necessary to have healthy relationships that can lead to marriage. So it's quite unfortunate that we are seeing the potential that can happen in these developed countries if we don't take the steps right here in Trinidad. So of course we were happy to share. However, I was a little distraught by the whole idea and I put my pen to paper and we sent it to many people who would listen. And what came out of that was a podcast. A podcast was created from a document. And that led us to our next idea of It Matters Minute. That was launched last week. And what we're doing is taking many of the assignments written by our own teachers in our own schools, creating podcasts out of it and sending it to parents. So we didn't get through directly with training parents, but we're trying to work indirectly to educate them based on assignments written by our own school teachers who had parents in mind. And of course, the last way you can support and help us is by purchasing Father's book, reading it, promoting the pedagogy behind it, and adopting it as your own. So thank you very much. Feel free to find out more, join with us any way you'd like.
Yeah. So, okay, present, man.
Grace, I have the honor to present to you a signed and dedicated copy of the book here. Dedication will come shortly. And I hope that this book will assist in this information that we are all involved in here in the church and forming the next generation. Right?
And now, just to say a few words, we have the Archbishop of Port of Spain, Most Reverend Jason Gordon.
First thing is to congratulate Father Mark for doing a wonderful job. I think we should give him a proper round of applause for that. Very important work. But I just want a note here. Father Mark started by saying there are no old people in the room, and then he had identified himself as old people. I am out of that. Let's just be clear on that one. Okay, good. there are three connections for me of the importance of this book. For my discipline is long history. And the first 500 years of Christianity, the great debate was on the nature of God, ending with the creeds, where we now say, I believe, and we profess what the creeds are. And that took us a couple hundred years to figure out. The next 1,000 years, the great debate was about the nature of the church. In 1056 or so, they split with the Orthodox Church. In the 1500s, the Protestant Reformation, and trying to understand what is the nature of this church that Jesus left. The last 500 years, and gaining momentum now, the great debate is about the nature of the human person. And when you understand that debate, everywhere you go, that is the debate. Whether you look at AI, whether you look at the gender ideology, the gender politics, whether you look at the imposition of the Western countries of their values upon us, the great debate is on the nature of the human person. And so I think this book is timely to start grounding the human person, not in ideas that are floating elsewhere, but from a depth of our long intellectual tradition with Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, and finding a way of understanding what is it to be human and what is a human person. And I think that that is really, really important. So that's my first thing of why this is important. The second one is the historians, husband and wife, Will and Ariel Durant. They've set about to write the history of civilization. They wrote 20 large volumes on the history of civilization. It's a mammoth work. And when they finished their last volume, they sat back and said, well, what did we learn from all of this? And they wrote a beautiful little book, The Lessons of History. And for me, that's a treasure. And in that book, as they look at civilization and its ebb and flow, the liberal and the conservative is an ebb and flow through many civilizations over the long journey of civilization. And one of the chapters they said, whenever the liberal agenda gets too far, the parents forget how to raise children. They come back to the conservative organizations to ask help with raising their children. We have to become experts in raising a generation. And if we don't do it as church, then it will not be done by society. Parents are forgetting how to raise children. And because of that, we are seeing all the social things that you see everywhere. My third connection with the book is the concept that Tonia raised, authentic integral human development. For me, I've been speaking about that for the last 20 years as the touchstone of Catholicity. It's the development of each person, every dimension of the human person. And when you go into the inner workings of Father's books, you see the development of the mind, the development of the heart, the development of the body, the development of the spirit. And when we have a roadmap for the integral development of each part of the human person, we start to have an understanding of how we develop each person and every person. That's how you get societies to flourish. Father, congratulations.
Well, I just want to say on behalf of Father Mark, thank you for attending. I think he's happy now that it's all over and very proud that it's happened.
Thank you. It's great to have you, Frank.
No problem. Thank you. And just to let you know that there are some bevies and nibbles that you can avail yourself of out in the corridor. Thank you. And Father's book is available on sale. He'll be positioning himself right there. For $200 a book. And just come here and... Right, so you see, capitalism is alive and well. So, just to say thank you again, and thank you, Father, for this opportunity.
Oh, wow.